I guess the industry is very good at working in silos, and that starts at OEM level. The manufacturers have an after-sales team and a sales team that rarely speak, and that's the same at dealership level.
Welcome back to the Armchair Show. I'm your host, Mark Ellis, and I'm joined today by Jeremy.
Hi,
Jeremy,
how you doing?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, you've been in this studio quite a few times, haven't you?
Been here a few times now. So good to be back.
Absolutely. For the people who don't know who you are and what you do, do you want to give us a quick intro?
Sure. So Jeremy Evans, Chief Executive of Marketing Delivery. We've been around since 2007. And we are a kind of CRM social media agency, only work in automotive. So all of our clients are automotive. Got about 500 dealers that we work with up and down the country. We take data from dealers, DMS systems, lead management systems, basically any system that they've got data in that we can get data from, stick that into our data hub, and then we've got some very clever algorithms that developer people who are far more intelligent than me put together to figure out when the customers are due a contact about whatever they're engaged in, whether that be an inquiry, an after-sales reminder, or at whatever point they are in that kind of car ownership cycle, really. And those messages delivered by email, SMS, and then we do a bit of social media work with them as well, with things like stock inventory ads and campaigns. So
nice. That's what you call an elevator pitch, don't you?
There you go.
That was done. We haven't even got to the top yet.
Yeah.
Just sort of stepping back a little bit. What's your journey been into this industry?
So I actually came into this industry from high street retail. So I was a boot store manager of all things,
Okay.
and as a car nut and a marketing aficionado, wanted to get away from general management into more specifically marketing, and saw a role come up called service marketing specialist. It was kind of a Ford sponsored role, placed at Bristol Street in Bromley, Ford dealership, working there on setting up outbound call centres and setting up the whole service reminder prospects and kind of process. And arrived there from a high street retailer that had just spent a fortune on launching the Advantage card to figure out what people were buying and when, to try and figure out what they would go next, to being presented with the keys to this DMS called Kerridge, which I think was Rev 7.3 at the time.
Good memory.
Which had all the relevant fields in it, but very few of them filled out accurately. So my journey with dealer data started in 2001 with that version of Kerridge. Spent some time then working with Bristol Street, worked with the Birchwood Group as group marketing manager there, and then went off to Nissan as a regional marketing manager, and from there set up marketing delivery in 2007.
Wow. And how's that journey been? What have you seen change over that time? If you could pick one thing that's changed with the industry over that period.
Tech. Just the adoption of tech. Yeah. So, we joke within marketing delivery that we've built the stuff that we wish we had 20 years ago when we worked in dealerships. So, where we put processes in place for phone calls, for letters, for postcards, now it's emails, SMS, and social media audiences. So, it's the tech and the touch points that have changed. The messaging and the frequency that you would have liked to have done 20 years ago, but would have cost you a fortune in stamps. So, the journey we mapped out 20 years ago would probably be fairly similar to the journey we have now. Just we had to be more selective then because it was more expensive.
Yeah, I think we talk about that a lot on this show, that it's the basics of the industry aren't any different, really, are they? It's just what surrounds it that's different.
It's still talking to customers about either the car they want or the car they own.
Are you excited about the future in terms of, with AI coming in? Obviously, we could spend all day on that.
We were speaking just outside before we came in about AI and about its advantages and pitfalls. So I guess, as with any adoption of any new tech, it'll take a while to figure out the best way of using it. But that's just the beauty of where we're at the minute, isn't it? Really, there's always something new on the horizon.
Absolutely, but we're not talking about AI today. We're talking about service bays, aren't we? Which doesn't, on the surface of it, doesn't sound that exciting compared to AI. But why do you want to talk about service bays?
So one of the things, my first job in automotive was service, so it's always my kind of go-to. But certainly since COVID, we've seen the importance of service escalate. We kind of talk about service as being part of the sales process now. So we've done a bit of analysis and look at our clients, and about half of the vehicles that come through their service workshops weren't purchased from that dealer or that dealer group. And if we think about the challenges in stock procurement over the last couple of years and finding new customers, actually there's a massive untapped resource there in cars that have been regularly serviced by potential new customers that are already brand advocates because they're already driving the car. They're already, assuming the service job is being done well, dealership advocates. So actually to tap into that resource to talk to those customers about changing their car, whether they need to from we want something bigger, we want something smaller. And we've seen, again, since COVID and changes in working practices, we've seen all sorts of changes in people's buying habits and which cars they now want to buy. Differences in brands, new brands on the market, and traditional nameplate vehicles, things like the Fiesta, now no longer being available. Where do all those Fiesta service customers go for their next car, and what do they buy? So how are dealers engaging with their service customers? Because I think it's a massive resource for both sales customers and stock.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going through this at the moment, where I've got a car that's coming up for. I've had it for 3 years. Yeah. It's on a finance deal that is 4 years long, but typically, I know a lot of people, including me, get to 3 years and start to get itchy feet. Yeah. It's had an issue. I mean, I can say it's BMW, but it's had an issue which they've sorted out very kindly out of service, because it was an unusual one. But they haven't really. I won't say where it was, but they haven't really followed up on that. Yeah. They fixed the part. Yep. Left me happy with that, but they haven't given me any indication that it might be worth talking to the sales team. Yeah,
I guess the industry is very good at working in silos, and that starts at OEM level. The manufacturers have an after-sales team and a sales team that rarely speak, and that's the same at dealership level. I've been there, seen it firsthand, where the service manager is not interested in introducing his customers to, or her customers to, the sales team, and the sales team don't do a particularly good job of finding out who's in for service and what they can do and talk to them. Now, thankfully, tech can help with that. Equally, being fair to service and sales teams, there are less of them in terms of bodies on the ground to do that kind of thing from day to day. So leaning on the tech is probably the best way of doing it anyway, and kind of filtering through and delivering back the leads where people have expressed an interest and have kind of taken a positive action. So automating the process of filtering through people who have got a service booking and asking them if they want to book a test drive or a showroom appointment on the same day. Putting used car stock in front of people who are in for service. Again, one of the things that's common is people get their car serviced just before they sell it, or before they put it up for sale. Yep. So asking people who have just had their car serviced, are you thinking of selling? Here's a selection of our used vehicles in stock. If you want to have a look at any new cars, let us know, talk to us. Again, it's all good practice that can be automated. Use the tech to automate it, and not rely on the fewer people on the ground to trawl through lists to try and speak to all of those people and find out who might be interested, but use the tech to do it and deliver the warmed up leads back to the showroom.
Again, it's quite often the simplest things, isn't it? Yeah. The one thing that dealership did do right was they gave us a courtesy car, which was an iX1, and coincidentally we needed a new family car as well, and we've ordered one because of that experience. I don't know if that's why they did that. Who knows? But
you'd like to think so.
I gave them the benefit of the doubt with that. But going back to what you were saying about the this lack of communication between departments, why do you think that exists?
Everybody's got their own targets. Their target is based on a service manager's target is based on workshop hours, potentially, but some parts sold in there as well. He's not targeted on new car sales or used car sales. So I think it's everybody's focused on their own target in their own part of the business, and it almost needs the tech to take that kind of holistic view of the business really and knit things together so that people are specialists in their roles. Service departments are specialists in their roles. So asking them to become a sales team that's not what they do naturally anyway. So if you can get the tech to kind of take that away and do the almost like the digital triage, if you like, of the service customers to find out who is interested and then deliver those leads back to the sales team, I think just bridges that gap.
Yeah, I guess part of the challenge here is that it's that classic thing of it being everyone's job, so it becomes no one's job, doesn't it? How do dealerships get around this? If we've got a dealership manager listening to this now, watching this now, thinking, I know this. Tech, I understand that I need to work on that. What's the one thing they can do to kind of kickstart that?
Check their data sources, really. Check that all the data sources are correct, and that most of the DMSs have got standard reports on kind of new vehicles, new customers that have been set up, and just have somebody at the dealership checking that all that data is input correctly, because any tech that you do employ to do any of these things I've been speaking about relies on data being accurate. And we'll be banging on about data accuracy for 20 years, but it's just as relevant as ever. We see vehicles come through workshops where they leave and the customer's email address hasn't been updated, mobile hasn't been updated, sometimes even the service date hasn't been updated. So checking that the data is correct, so that it can feed into a tech-led process is key to it all.
Yeah, and from a customer service point of view, what should these dealerships be looking at to refine that process, and also I suppose join up that whole thing of someone takes their car in for a service, maybe at the back of their mind they're thinking I might want to change it at some stage soon. What can they do from a tech and a service perspective to nudge them towards buying
I
mode?
think customers almost expect a tech-led approach these days. So for a customer who is booked in for a service to receive an email to say, are you thinking about changing? We know you're in next Thursday. Did you want to book a showroom appointment while you're in? I don't think any customer would be surprised to receive that. So actually, you don't need to spend time getting somebody to look through a list to make a phone call to do things manually, because the customer kind of expects that stuff to happen nowadays. So that blend between that kind of offline and online customer service, if you like, is expected / demanded by customers now anyway.
Should there be a sway towards one of those over the other?
Let the customer choose. Let the customer choose. We've always been of the opinion that give the customer all the routes to reply and interact. So all of our emails have always come from a genuine reply to email address. Pet hate of ours is no reply at email addresses. So customers can reply to any of those emails. They can click on buttons to fill out inquiry forms or to go to Facebook page or whatever it happens to be. So whatever route the customer wants to, they might want to pick up the phone and say, I've got your email. Yes, I'd love to. So whichever route the customer wants to take, really just be resourced for it so that you can handle that.
Yeah.
So where it's maybe not so much outbound in terms of that call effort, that email manual process outbound, certainly when it's inbound and received, then that's where the join is, if you like, between the kind of online and offline. So that's where that join needs to be quite firm. That's interesting,
because I think again we don't talk about that enough on this show. I think where it like you say, it's the customer who should lead.
Yeah.
I think it's probably way too easy to assume that you just have to go down the digital route because that's what everyone's doing.
Yeah, people always talk about online retailing, e-commerce. Well, that's fine for some customers for some purchases, and for others it's not. With service bookings, there's still a lot of people would rather make that booking on the phone because they want to talk about the courtesy car, the time they can drop it off and pick it up. Can they wait for it? There's a squeak, there's a rattle. Can this be looked at? Can that be looked at? So although the engagement with a service reminder process from an outbound email SMS perspective is good, still the majority of the bookings are made by somebody either phoning the dealership as a result of that, or when the outbound call comes in a bit later in the process, they're already preconditioned because they've had the email, they've had the text, they're already thinking, I need to talk to them about the squeak when it goes around a bend. So when the call comes in, it's an easier conversion because the customer's ready for it, or the customer's already got their first and called in, so because they want that personal interaction. So let the customer drive it.
Makes sense. Have you got any personal stories or stories that you've heard from other people where this has worked really well, where someone's gone in for a service booking, or you might have done yourself, and then you've come out thinking, I'm going to buy a new car?
Well, we've seen it recently. We've been doing some safety recall work, looking at, again, ways of getting lapsed customers back into service bays, and looking at those vehicles that have got an outstanding recall. And we've seen people come back in for their recall to be done. They've also had a health check done and booked in for the next service. So the value of the work that's come in from those services has been quite high. And we've also seen some of those customers go on and buy a car from that dealership.
Okay.
Similarly with health check follow-ups, you were in 6 months ago. We took a look at your car. Here's the link to the video. Again, we've seen some of those people come by, and we've seen the average invoice value, or the invoice value for some of those be £30,000, and they bought a car.
Nice.
So yes, lots of them come back and have the work done, but others will go, now's an opportunity to have a look at cars. So we see it in the data, so we know it happens. All the kind of, we worked out the other day that we've got about 300 years worth of automotive experience in the business. So I guess the steps we put in place are based on experience and knowledge, but then they're verified by data. So when we do something, we then look for the data to show whether it worked or not. And thankfully, most of the time it does. But again, the click-through rate on stock alert emails that we send to service customers on here's our stock, and this is what we have in stock, here's cars that have changed in price. Again, the interaction with that to a service customer is high. Now, they've not necessarily asked, they haven't got an active inquiry. There's an assumption made that a percentage of those people will be thinking about changing their car. So we send some of those messages out, and people interact well with them. So
nice.
We, like I say, it's kind of based on experience, but backed up with data,
which is very important, isn't it? This is all about creating loyalty, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what should dealerships do to drive that loyalty?
It's about that blend of online and offline customer service, and making it as seamless as possible, so that when the online message, whatever media that's taken, is responded to, that it's picked up and dealt with correctly by the real person that kind of sits behind it, and that the real person then updates the data accordingly with what's gone on in that conversation, so that the next online follow-up is relevant and is correct. So it is that blend of online and offline, but keeping the data as up to date and accurate as possible, so that the next trigger point is accurate.
We might as well touch on it now, because it kind of comes into this conversation quite naturally. Should AI play a role in this? And if it should, what kind of role?
I guess it depends on your definition of AI. AI, in terms of true AI, I think something going out looking at the entire web and learning from it is not always relevant. Channeled in the right way, looking for, if somebody's clicked on a car at a certain price value, the next cars you offer them being within a price band that's relevant to them, using the data to kind of predict what isn't required next, and if the customer acts on that and interacts with an email, dictating what happens next with the next message that goes out, or the message that's delivered back to the dealership to follow up, because sometimes it's not relevant just to have a constant automated email response. Sometimes it needs a real person to step in and go, I'll pick that up and deal with it. So I think if you're, whether you call it AI, programmatic, algorithmic, whatever words you want to use, it just has to be relevant and has to channel people and not bombard people. There is a danger that you can bombard people and you kind of almost beat them into submission or beat them out the door. Our unsubscribe rates are tiny, and that's because a lot of thought has gone into these algorithms in terms of what happens next, what's relevant to the customer, what do they engage with, and the year's worth of doing this to say, okay, that didn't work, we won't do that anymore, we'll try this instead. So that constant evolution of the tech and the automation, whether you want to call that AI, whether you call it any of those other descriptors that have been used over the last few years, it's all relevant. It all has its place. Just needs channeling.
Yeah, it's there to assist, isn't it? And to ensure that it doesn't get in the way.
Assist,
of the
not replace, I guess, is the word.
Yeah, that's reassuring always. With that in mind, Jeremy, what are you looking forward to the most over the next 3 years of the industry?
I think it's just bringing those barriers between online and offline kind of further down, and just making that blended process. So, and across the dealership as well. So we've talked about the silos of service and sales. We can use tech to help blur that line. We can use tech to improve the relationship between online and offline by delivering information to the offline engagement that can then feed back into the online version. So I think just the blurring of those lines and bringing everything a little bit more kind of into symmetry with each other. It's never been easier to do it, and it's only going to get easier because the tech is only going to improve. I think accepting that you can use tech to improve those blurred lines and those silos and that online offline relationship, because that's what customers expect. And the slicker you are at that, the better you do that, the more impressed customers will be, the more loyal they will be, the more they will come back with their business, and the more they'll tell their family and friends all about it and come back. And as we all know, it's far cheaper to retain customers and bring new ones in from word of mouth than it is to go fight for them, on a completely blank page.
Isn't it just completely, brilliant advice there, Jeremy. Not the first time you've been in the studio.
No.
Not the last time either, I'm sure. No. We'll have you back in it, absolutely. So, no, thanks again for today.
No problem. That's been good.
Cheers.
Thank you.